What if we told you that a single electric car from Burkina Faso has the power to shake the foundations of the global auto industry? Sounds impossible, right? But that's exactly what's happening. For decades, Africa was never meant to build its cars. It was only supposed to supply the raw materials while the West, Japan, and China made billions. But now, that system is under attack. Burkina Faso didn't just build an electric vehicle, it rewrote the game's rules. And suddenly, Toyota and Japan are scrambling to maintain their grip on Africa's resources. The question is, will Africa finally take control of its future? Or will foreign automakers find a way to crush this revolution before it begins? Here, we would like to take a moment and thank you for supporting us and being a valued part of our strong community. And if you are not yet a member, we encourage you to join us and help build an even stronger community together. Let's get started. For over a century, the global auto industry has been controlled by Western and Asian powers. The world's largest automakers, Toyota, Volkswagen, Tesla, and Ford, have built massive empires on the back of cheap African resources and weak industrial infrastructure. Africa was only meant to supply the materials, never to manufacture the cars. But suddenly, the entire system is under threat. Burkina Faso built an electric car.
Burkina Faso has launched its first homemade electric car.
Elle offre un transport respect.
Not a concept car, not a one-off experiment funded by foreign investors. This is a real, fully functional, high-performance electric vehicle EV, one that was conceived, designed, built, and developed in Africa, using African resources by African engineers. This is not just about one car. This is about a continent proving it can take control of its industries, something that global powers never wanted to see. For decades, the global auto industry operated under a simple, unspoken rule. Africa was only supposed to provide the raw materials, not manufacture the final product. African nations have the lithium, cobalt, and copper needed for EV batteries, yet all these minerals were extracted and shipped to Europe, the US, and Asia, where companies like Tesla, Toyota, Volkswagen, and BYD used them to build multi-billion-dollar empires. African consumers were then expected to buy back the finished product at sky-high prices, effectively making Africa a permanent customer, never a competitor. But that system is now under attack. Burkina Faso's electric car is proof that Africa can break free from this cycle. Unlike past African vehicle projects that were dismissed as symbolic gestures, this car is built for real-world use. It has a 330-kilometer driving range and a 30-minute charge time, and is designed specifically to handle Africa's tough road conditions. Features that make it not just functional, but competitive in the global EV market. This isn't a government-funded experiment that will never reach production. This is a serious technological achievement that has sent shockwaves through the industry. If Burkina Faso, a country with limited industrial infrastructure compared to South Africa, Nigeria, or Kenya, can develop a competitive electric car, then what happens when larger African nations follow suit? And this is precisely why Toyota, Japan, and the West are starting to panic. Because if Africa begins to manufacture its electric vehicles, it will no longer be dependent on foreign automakers. It will be a producer, not just a consumer. The old power structure collapses, and that is a future that global auto giants are desperately trying to prevent. Toyota, Japan's largest automaker, has suddenly taken a deep interest in Zambia. If that seems random, think again. This is a calculated move to protect Toyota's supply chain, which depends entirely on Africa's resources to survive. The global electric car industry is built on three critical minerals: cobalt, lithium, and copper. Without these materials, there are no electric vehicles. Up until now, Western and Asian companies have been able to take these resources cheaply, with little resistance. But what happens when African nations stop exporting their minerals and start manufacturing their electric cars? The answer is simple. Toyota, Tesla, and Volkswagen are in serious trouble. That's why Japan is making strategic moves in Zambia. Once Zambia and other African nations realize their full potential, Toyota and other global automakers lose control over the industry. But before we get into why Toyota is panicking, let's break this down further. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. The world expected a disruptive shift in the auto industry to come from China, India, or Brazil. No one expected it to come from Burkina Faso. For decades, the global auto industry operated like an exclusive club, and Africa was never invited. Germany, the US, and Japan dominated manufacturing. China emerged as an industrial powerhouse. Africa, however, remained a supplier of cheap minerals, never a producer of finished products. This was not an accident. It was a deliberate strategy designed to keep Africa dependent on foreign automakers. The business model was simple. Africa provides the raw materials, foreign companies manufacture the cars, and Africa buys the finished products at inflated prices. This cycle ensured that Africa remained locked in a position of economic weakness, while global automakers made billions. Burkina Faso just shattered that model. Burkina Faso's electric car is proof that Africa has everything it needs: the materials, the engineers, and the technology to compete globally, and that is terrifying for the auto giants. For decades, Africa has been told that it lacks the infrastructure to build high-tech industries. But this car proves that the narrative is false. Burkina Faso has proven that with the right vision and leadership, Africa can industrialize on its terms. This is why Japan is already moving to stop this before it spreads. Now let's return to what Japan is trying to do in Zambia. This is how power struggles happen. When a dominant player feels threatened, they react fast. Toyota saw the warning signs from Burkina Faso, and Toyota knows exactly what's at stake. That's why, out of nowhere, Japan invited Zambia's president for a diplomatic visit. But this isn't about diplomacy. This is about controlling Zambia's resources before they stop flowing into Japanese hands. Zambia controls one of the world's largest copper reserves. Copper is essential for electric vehicles. Without it, there are no electric motors, no batteries, and no charging stations. Right now, Zambia exports its copper cheaply to Japan, China, and the West. But if Zambia starts keeping its copper and building its battery industry, then Toyota's supply chain is at risk. Toyota is not here to help Zambia industrialize. Toyota is here to secure Zambia's copper before it stops selling it cheaply. The strategy is simple. Japan offers Zambia investment opportunities. Zambia agrees to partnerships with Japanese automakers, and Zambia continues exporting raw materials instead of keeping them for local industries. This is economic colonialism in disguise. Once Zambia realizes it doesn't need Japan and starts building its own EV industry, Toyota loses control. But this isn't just about Zambia. Japan's interest in Zambia is a sign of a bigger shift in global geopolitics. The balance of power in the auto industry is moving, and global automakers know that if they don't act now, they will lose their grip on Africa's resources. The question is, will Zambia take the bait, or will it learn from Burkina Faso and choose to invest in itself? This is the biggest problem holding Africa back. Not a lack of resources, not a lack of talent, but a system of economic control that keeps the continent trapped in a cycle of dependence. Africa is not poor. It has been made poor through decades of deliberate resource exploitation, unfair trade deals, and economic sabotage designed to keep foreign powers in control of its wealth. At the heart of this problem is the continuous signing of bad deals by African leaders. Instead of building self-sustaining industries, many governments have prioritized foreign investment over local development, believing the false promise that multinational corporations will develop Africa in exchange for its resources. But history has shown that these deals always favor foreign companies, leaving Africa with extracted wealth and no lasting infrastructure to show for it. The blueprint is always the same. Every time Africa gets close to industrializing, foreign companies step in with contracts, strategic partnerships, and development funds that appear beneficial on the surface, but are designed to maintain Africa as a supplier, never a manufacturer. These contracts are filled with hidden clauses that ensure African nations continue exporting raw materials at low prices, while foreign companies keep the manufacturing and profits offshore. Look at what happened with Nigeria's oil industry. Nigeria has some of the largest oil reserves in the world, Yet the majority of its petroleum industry is controlled by Western corporations like Shell, Chevron, and BP. Instead of refining its crude oil, Nigeria exports it cheaply, only to import refined gasoline at much higher costs. This deliberate economic dependency has resulted in fuel shortages in an oil-rich nation, proving how foreign interests manipulate African economies for their benefit. The same story repeats across the continent. Ghana mines gold, but foreign mining companies take the profits. The DRC holds 70% of the world's cobalt, but Western and Chinese companies dominate its extraction and sales. Zimbabwe has lithium, yet instead of using it to power an African battery industry, it is being exported to Tesla, BYD, and Volkswagen. This is the system that Burkina Faso's electric car threatens to disrupt. For the first time, an African nation is keeping its resources and manufacturing its high-tech products. This is why foreign automakers are in panic mode. If other African nations follow Burkina Faso's example and reject exploitative trade agreements, they can begin building self-sufficient industries that no longer depend on foreign partnerships. But will Africa's leaders finally take a stand? Or will they continue signing the same exploitative deals that have kept Africa from achieving true industrial independence? As Burkina Faso takes a historic step forward in the automotive industry, one thing has become undeniably clear. Africa is no longer willing to be controlled. What Burkina Faso has done is more than just build a car. It has challenged the global power structure, proving that Africa is capable of developing its industries, creating high-tech innovations, and positioning itself as a global competitor. This is not just a shift in the automotive industry. It is a shift in Africa's mindset. For too long, African economies have been held back by exploitative contracts, corrupt political elites, and global institutions that design policies to maintain Africa as a dependent market. The IMF and World Bank have pushed African nations into debt traps, while Western corporations have maintained monopolies over key industries. Every time an African country attempts to break free, foreign interference quickly follows, whether through economic pressure, political destabilization, or media narratives that frame self-sufficiency as a threat. But now, something is different. Burkina Faso's decision to build rather than buy, to manufacture rather than export raw materials, signals that African nations are ready to take control of their economic future. This is not an isolated case. Across the continent, the signs of a new Africa are emerging. Countries like Rwanda, Ghana, and Zimbabwe are no longer willing to play by the old rules. They are implementing bold policies to take control of their economic futures, refusing to let the West dictate their industries. This shift represents a turning point in Africa's economic history. These nations are not waiting for foreign approval to build their industries. They are prioritizing local development, enforcing stricter regulations on resource exports, and making sure that Africa, rather than Western corporations, reaps the rewards of Africa's wealth. Rwanda, a country once devastated by conflict, has emerged as one of Africa's fastest-growing economies, investing aggressively in technology and manufacturing. The Rwandan government has made it clear that it will no longer allow Western nations to dictate its economic policies. Instead of relying on foreign aid and economic policies crafted by Western institutions like the IMF and World Bank, Rwanda is creating its roadmap for growth. One of Rwanda's biggest moves has been the development of a local technology industry. The government has invested heavily in ICT, digital infrastructure, and manufacturing, aiming to make Rwanda a key player in Africa's tech sector. The country is home to the Carnegie Mellon University Africa campus, a leading institution that trains African engineers and developers, ensuring that Rwanda does not have to rely on foreign talent to drive its technological revolution. Beyond tech, Rwanda is also pushing for local manufacturing. The government is enforcing policies that favor homegrown industries over foreign corporations, ensuring that Rwandan businesses, not multinational companies, benefit from the country's economic growth. The focus is on self-sufficiency, ensuring that Rwanda does not become economically dependent on the West, as many African nations have in the past. This model has proven successful. Rwanda's economy has been growing at an average of 7 to 8% per year, one of the highest rates in the world. Foreign powers have realized that they cannot control Rwanda's economic policies, and the country is becoming a symbol of African resilience and self-reliance. Apart from that, Ghana, the second largest gold producer in Africa, has long struggled with foreign exploitation of its mining industry. For decades, multinational corporations, particularly from the US, Canada, and the UK, have dominated Ghana's gold sector, extracting massive wealth while leaving only a fraction of the profits within the country. But Ghana is fighting back. The government has introduced new policies aimed at keeping more of its gold wealth inside the country. One of the most significant moves was the establishment of a gold purchase program, where Ghana's central bank buys gold directly from local miners, reducing reliance on Western markets. This is a game changer because it allows Ghana to build its gold reserves and strengthen its currency, rather than allowing multinational companies to control and manipulate the value of Ghana's gold exports. Additionally, Ghana has been increasing the local processing of gold rather than simply exporting raw materials. More refineries are being built within the country, ensuring that value is added to the gold before it leaves Ghana. This means more jobs for Ghanaians, more tax revenue for the government, and less dependence on foreign corporations. The Western mining companies that have benefited from Ghana's resources for decades are not happy with these changes. Many of them have resisted these policies, claiming they harm foreign investment. But in reality, what they fear is losing their monopoly over Africa's resources. Ghana's new approach signals that African countries are learning from past mistakes and are no longer willing to give away their wealth for free. If gold and oil were the foundation of 20th century economies, lithium is the foundation of the 21st century. As the world shifts to electric vehicles and renewable energy, lithium has become one of the most valuable resources on the planet. And Zimbabwe happens to be sitting on one of the largest lithium reserves in the world. For years, foreign mining companies have extracted Zimbabwe's lithium at incredibly low costs, processed it abroad, and sold it for massive profits. Western and Chinese corporations have rushed to Zimbabwe, knowing that lithium is essential for the future of battery technology and electric vehicles. But Zimbabwe is changing the game. The government has banned the export of raw lithium, requiring that it be processed locally before being sold to the international market. This is a bold move that forces foreign corporations to either invest in Zimbabwe's industrial sector or lose access to its lithium entirely. This decision is already reshaping the global battery industry. Companies that once exploited Zimbabwe's lithium for dirt cheap are now being forced to negotiate fairer terms. Some Chinese firms have already begun setting up local processing plants, bringing jobs and investment into the country instead of simply extracting wealth. Zimbabwe's policy is not just about lithium, it is a model for how Africa can take control of its natural resources. If more African countries adopt similar policies, the days of foreign companies walking away with Africa's wealth while leaving behind poverty and environmental destruction will be over. What Rwanda, Ghana, and Zimbabwe are doing is part of a larger shift happening across Africa. These nations are proving that Africa no longer has to play by the rules set by foreign corporations and Western governments. They are enforcing policies that prioritize local development, protect national wealth, and ensure that the benefits of Africa's resources stay within Africa. This is exactly why global powers are watching nervously. For too long, they have relied on Africa remaining in a weakened economic state, rich in resources but poor in industry. But this model is collapsing, and it is Africa itself that is tearing it down. The success of these nations sends a powerful message to the rest of the continent. If Rwanda can build a high-tech economy, if Ghana can control its gold, and if Zimbabwe can protect its lithium, then every other African nation can do the same. This is the beginning of a new chapter for Africa, one where the continent is not just a provider of raw materials, but a powerful force in global trade and industry. The world may not be ready for it, but Africa is no longer asking for permission. These changes are not just political decisions. They reflect a larger shift in Africa's self-perception. The idea that Africa must wait for foreign investment, follow Western economic models, or rely on foreign partnerships to develop is being rejected. Instead, African nations are realizing that the only real path to independence is through direct control over their industries, resources, and policies, and nothing can stop this momentum if Africa truly desires it. The only thing that can halt this revolution is internal hesitation. If African leaders allow fear, complacency, or external pressure to sway them, the continent risks repeating the same mistakes of the past, where economic decisions are dictated by foreign entities rather than by the interests of African people. But if nations like Burkina Faso continue to push forward with this new mentality, Africa's future will no longer be shaped by outsiders. The message is clear. Africa is ready to take charge. The world is watching, and this time, Africa will not ask for permission. Coming back to Burkina Faso's EVs, Toyota knows what's coming. The global auto industry is watching in fear. They see the warning signs, and they know that the moment Africa stops selling its raw materials, everything changes. But the only question that matters is, will Africa take control of its destiny, or will it allow foreign companies to steal its future again? Because if Africa makes the right moves, the global auto industry will never be the same again. This is Africa's moment. The world isn't ready for it, but Africa must be. Do you think anything can stop Africa? What will happen if it keeps progressing? Let us know in the comments section. Is anything stronger and necessary for Africa than unity? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.